Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, gender non-conforming individuals, non-binary individuals, and human beings at large. And welcome to this morning's engagement as we dive into some very crucial subjects and we ask some very uncomfortable questions with some key players in the LGBTIQ plus space, and also hopefully come to a resolution with regards to GBVF, which is a pandemic that was declared a pandemic by President Cyril Ramaphosa in the formation of a GBVF response task team. And one of those questions that we'll be asking is the task team including the LGBTIQ plus community in their efforts to combat GBVF, but also what are some of these responses and how effective have they been? My name is Ditejo. I am a journalist, a writer, a television and radio broadcaster, an MC, a presenter, hopefully next year's Pride of Africa MC as well. And I will be your moderator today, in addition to being an LGBTIQ plus activist with a special emphasis on the T. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, just want to give a quick definition of what domestic violence is, because it really is a layered transgression. It's a layered violation, and we always speak about it at surface level, where we speak about the physical aspects of it, but it really is a layered violation. In terms of the United Nations Charter, domestic violence is the abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one person to gain or maintain control over another person. It is regarded as a serious social evil, and the Domestic Violence Act number 116 of 1998 of South Africa defines domestic violence as any form of abuse, which includes physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, or economic harassment, damage to property, stalking, entry into a person's property without their consent, and any other abusive or controlling behavior where such a conduct causes harm or may cause harm to your health, safety, or well-being. So it also includes, it has financial implications. It also includes damage to property, entering a person's property without their consent, and even stalking, which are some of the elements that many people don't know. And even those of us who do know it, we never really report domestic violence in those terms. And that's part of what we will be unpacking rather today, the intersectionality between GBVF, gender-based violence and femicide, and the LGBTIAQ plus community. And to kick off our proceedings today is the person who is partly responsible for hosting today's difficult and hopefully still wonderful discussion, as we hope this is not going to just be a talk shop, but we will also come with resolutions. And without any further ado, I would like to welcome our other host, Ms. Sazini Mojapelo, who is the CEO of the GBVF Response Fund. And also, just while introducing Sazini, I'd like to encourage all our speakers this morning to please also mention your pronouns, so that we can refer to you in a respectful manner as we continue with this morning's engagement. My pronouns are she, her, and her majesty. Thank you. Over to you, Sazini.
No, thank you for that. I'll go with what you're saying. I'm also Her Majesty. But good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends from all gender identities and expressions. It's a privilege to welcome each of you today to today's webinar, where we'll address a critical and often overlooked topic: the intersection between gender-based violence and the challenges faced by the LGBTQIA+ community. This discussion is part of a larger mission to foster inclusivity and equity in our fight against GBVF, acknowledging that the experiences of the LGBTQAI+ individuals often remain hidden in the shadows within mainstream responses. Today, we're not just here to share information. We're here to recognize and confront a harsh reality. Despite South Africa's progressive legal landscape, which guarantees non-discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, many LGBTQIA+ individuals continue to face profound levels of violence, discrimination, and stigma. This reality includes intimate partner violence, hate crimes, and structural violence compounded by societal rejection and marginalization. For too many, reaching out for help means facing the risk of secondary victimization or judgment within the very systems designed to protect and support them. As we gather today, it's essential to ask ourselves, in light of the heightened rates of GBVF affecting key and vulnerable populations in South Africa, are we doing enough in our response to address the unique challenges faced by queer individuals? We need to remind ourselves of our Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are. This belief emphasizes that we cannot be whole while parts of our community are suffering. When violence touches one person, it reverberates across all of us. Each story of harm and, yes, resilience, each statistic represents real people, friends, colleagues, your brother, my sister, whose experiences affect our collective well-being. So this webinar is about elevating LGBTQIA+ voices in the GBVF discourse and identifying practical ways to make our support systems more inclusive and indeed responsive. It's about collaborating across sectors to create safe, affirming spaces where everyone can seek help without fear and more so secondary victimization. It's about recognizing the intersectionality of gender-based violence and addressing it in a decisive manner. A queer woman still experiences gender-based violence and indeed can fall prey to femicide. Whether through policy change, improved access to healthcare, or community education, we have a shared responsibility to dismantle the social norms and barriers that allow such violence to persist, indeed, in the shadows. We acknowledge that as the fund, this is also a learning opportunity for us as well. As we optimize our approaches in catalyzing change in the comprehensive and inclusive response to GBV in the country, we will not ignore the violence faced by the LGBTQIA+ individuals. As we move forward in today's program, I encourage everyone to listen with empathy and engage with openness. The strength of our work lies in our collective commitment to building a society that not only honors the dignity and safety of individuals, but their very rights as well. I thank you for joining us on this journey together. Let's strive to create a South Africa where every person, regardless of sexual orientation or identity, can live free from fear and harm. I thank you. Let's hope we enjoy the proceedings. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that. That was Sazini Mujabelo, who is the CEO of the GBVF Response Fund. I'm just touching on what you said there, Sazini. There's great truth in that. Our success in this campaign in ridding GBVF within the LGBTI community depends on our collective effort. It needs all of us coming together. It is not just an LGBT LGBTIQ plus problem, that in the same way that it is not just a woman's problem, it is a national problem, and it's going to take the nation to fix it or to address it. Thank you very much for that sentiment. And now that we have been properly welcomed and we understand the purpose of the day, I'd like to call on my next speaker. Someone who is very, I almost want to say someone who needs no introduction, someone who is probably still recovering from the weekend that was, the epic weekend that was. Kay Ali is a passionate advocate for LGBTIQ plus rights and the founder and director of Pride of Africa LGBTQ Foundation. With a strong background in international projects management and a commitment to social justice, she has successfully organized 12 Pride marches in Johannesburg, including the recent Pride of Africa Day initiative. Kay Ali, welcome, and thank you for joining us in this very big discussion. We know that one of the key aspects or factors of GBV is social gatherings, and alcohol has also been attributed as one of the factors. And as someone who hosts events on such a large scale, this is something you are more than familiar with and may have possibly witnessed in your line of work. But welcome, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, absolutely. I think I still look like I've aged 10 years since this weekend. It was phenomenal. We didn't expect to double in capacity, but we did. And we navigated the day as best we could. But yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Kay Ali. I'm the founder of Pride of Africa, and my pronouns are she, they. And I want to thank you for being here today. As we gather towards the end of this very important month of October, I think we find ourselves speaking yet again about the intersection of African Pride Month and the ongoing struggles faced by the LGBTIA plus community. Today, I want to emphasize the critical importance of highlighting the impact of violence against this community and the role that technology, especially voice-based apps, plays in raising awareness and fostering solidarity. I think to improve the response to GBV, it's critical to adopt an inclusive, intersectional approach that recognizes and addresses the specific challenges the LGBTQIA plus community faces. And this includes training for service providers, comprehensive data collection, and the development of targeted resources that are accessible and affirming for all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. I think what's important is understanding the context. October is a month rich in significance. It's a time when we, as Africans, celebrate our African heritage, our pride, and our identities. But it's also a moment to reflect on the challenges we face. For many within the LGBTQIA plus community, this month can be a stark reminder of the violence and discrimination that persists. Reports indicate that individuals who identify as LGBTQIA plus often face higher rates of violence, discrimination, and exclusion, factors that can be exacerbated by their racial and cultural backgrounds. And that's, no better way of seeing it than looking at the African context. 33 out of 54 countries in Africa. And in many African countries, homosexuality remains criminalized. And for those identifying within the spectrum, often face severe repercussions, including violence, discrimination, and social ostracization. This reality paints a grim picture for many, underscoring the urgency of our message here today. The impact of violence on the LGBTIA plus community is profound. It's not just about physical harm, it's about emotional and psychological trauma that lasts long after the violence has occurred. This community my community experiences higher rates of mental health issues, substance abuse, and suicidal ideations compared to their heterosexual counterparts. For those who are part of the African diaspora, this violence is compounded by systematic racism, cultural stigmas, and societal pressures. The intersectionality of race and sexual orientation creates unique challenges that we must acknowledge and address. By shedding light on these issues, we empower individuals to seek help, advocate for themselves, and find strength in solidarity. The LGBTQIA plus community in Africa faces numerous challenges that are deeply rooted in the cultural, legal, and social frameworks. And I think let's unpack a few key issues. Criminalization of homosexuality. In many African countries, same sex relationships are criminalized, often with severe penalties and, in some instances, by death. This legal environment fosters fear and discrimination, pushing individuals into hiding. Another one, that's social stigmatization. If you look at cultural beliefs and norms, often stigmatize the LGBTQIA plus identities, leading to widespread discrimination. This stigma can result in family rejection, social ostracization, and violence. Violence and hate crimes. The LGBTQIA plus individuals are frequently victims of violence, including physical assault and murder. Hate crimes are often motivated by homophobia and transphobia, and perpetrators are rarely held accountable. Another one, or the fourth one, is lack of legal protection. Many African countries lack comprehensive legal protection against discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. This absence of protection exacerbates vulnerability to abuse and exploitation. Number 5, limited access to healthcare. Stigmatization often leads to inadequate healthcare access for the LGBTQIA plus individuals, including mental health services. Many avoid seeking help due to fear of further discrimination or violence. The youth vulnerability. The LGBTQIA plus youth often face bullying and harassment in schools, leading to mental health issues and higher rates of suicide. Many are also at risk of homelessness after being rejected by their families. The transgender rights issue. Transgender individuals particularly face challenges including difficulty accessing healthcare and legal recognition of their gender identity. They often experience heightened violence and discrimination. Political recession. In some countries, the LGBTQIA plus activism is met with political recession, including surveillance, harassment, and arrest of activists working for promoting LGBTQI rights. Intersectionality. Many LGBTQIA plus individuals often face intersecting forms of discrimination based on race, class, and other identities, further complicating their experiences and access to resources. Cultural and religious opposition. Strong cultural and religious beliefs often contribute to anti LGBTQIA sentiment, leading to further discrimination and isolation within communities. And this I can speak to from a very personal space, coming from an Orthodox Muslim Indian family with a background that is very religious. Addressing these issues requires concerted efforts from local and international organizations, policymakers, and allies to create a safer, more inclusive environment for the LGBTQIA plus individuals across the continent. Let's unpack the new age that we find ourselves in and the role of technology and voice based apps. Now, let's talk about the role of technology, particularly voice based applications, in amplifying these important conversations. In a world increasingly driven By digital interactions, voice-based platforms have emerged as a powerful tool for advocacy and community building, amplifying our voices. Voice-based apps allow individuals to share their experiences and stories in a safe environment, whether it's through podcasts, social media, or support groups. These platforms provide a space for marginalized voices to be heard. It also has the ability for fostering community. Online communities offer a sense of belonging, especially for those who may feel isolated due to their sexual orientation or cultural background. These platforms enable individuals to connect with each other who share similar experiences, fostering resilience and support. Raising awareness. Technology can serve as a catalyst for awareness. Campaigns that go viral can speak and spark conversations about violence against the LGBTQIA plus community. By sharing statistics, personal stories, and resources, we can educate our audiences and inspire action. In terms of continuous advocacy and activism, voice based apps also provide an avenue for advocacy. Activists can organize campaigns, share petitions, and mobilize support for policies that protect the rights of LGBTQIA plus individuals. This digital activism can translate into real world change. If I look at the statistics from the Pride social media from this past weekend, our Instagram impressions were sitting at over 2 million. These platforms need to be used more effectively with our call to action. As we reflect on the challenges faced by the LGBTQIA plus community during this significant month as October comes to an end, I urge each of you to take action. Here are a few ways I think we can contribute. Educate yourselves and others. Take the time to learn about specific challenges faced by the LGBTQIA plus individuals in our communities. Share this knowledge with friends, family, and colleagues for fostering better understanding. Support LGBTQIA plus organizations. Find local or international organizations that advocate for the rights and safety of us, whether it's through donations, volunteering, or simply spreading the word. Your support can make a very big difference. Utilize technology for good. Engage with apps that focus on LGBTQIA plus issues, share stories, participate in discussions, and advocate for change online. Your voice matters. Stand against the violence. Be an ally, be a support. Stand up against violence and discrimination whenever you encounter it. Create safe spaces for open dialogue and support for those affected. I think, in conclusion, as we navigate the end of African Pride Month, let's not forget the importance of highlighting the impact of violence on the LGBTQIA plus community. By utilizing technology and voice-based platforms, we can amplify our message, build supportive communities, and advocate for change. Let's honor the rich tapestry of our identities within our communities, stand in solidarity with each other, and work towards a future where everyone can live freely and without fear. Look at the turnout for Pride on Saturday. The 26th of October 2024 will go down in the history of Pride. The Johannesburg Pride March that we took out of the Pride Village on Saturday was probably the largest march to take to the streets in the history of this continent. And no floats, nothing fancy. Every single one of us, with our own personal advocacy, our own personal activism, took to the streets on foot. And I'll never forget that look on my face and in my heart when the march came back into the Pride Village, and I looked at the numbers that we came out with to make a point to stand our ground and to create that visibility of and awareness, not just for ourselves, but for the entire continent. And that is very, very big responsibility for us in South Africa. Because when I look at the Johannesburg Pride March and what we do with Pride of Africa, we are representing a continent. Finally, I'd like to thank the GBV Response Fund for your invaluable support and collaboration throughout Pride Month. I think as a team, your dedication to addressing gender based violence and uplifting the marginalized voices have made a significant impact. And being at Pride was a sense of pride for us because we could see the partners in you that are making a difference. And together, we are definitely fostering a safer and more inclusive community for all. So I really want to thank you and your team. Thank you, Didi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Am I unmuted? I think I am. Thank you very no, I'm not. Thank you very much for that gentle reminder, Kay. Well done once more for your accomplishment over the past weekend. And just to echo some of your sentiments, thank you firstly for reminding us of the privileges that we still have here in South Africa. Yes, we have our own problems, and as beautiful as our constitution may be, we know that it is not a lived experience for many people, especially those in the LGBTI community, but it is still an existing document that when used correctly can be used to advocate and to protect us. And just to remind us about the position that our African brothers and sisters and gender non-conforming individuals find themselves in comparison to us with regards to legislation and rights. So thank you very much for remembering our siblings in the diaspora. You also touched on some key issues there. The criminalization and the lack of legal protection emboldens those who perpetrate GBV and various other crimes against the LGBTI community. And it is in the strengthening of our laws, and also not even strengthening because the laws are already existing, but in the practicing and the executing of these beautiful laws, and not just to have them as documentation or words on paper. It is in these words coming alive that we will slowly combat this. You also mentioned a very interesting point of technology and voice-based apps, as I'm referring to digital activism, which has been criticized by many in past years, and having people being referred to as keyboard activists. But we really have seen how impactful, in a very positive way, things like podcasts can be, and people coming together in a digital space and using the internet responsibly and using it to do good, to bring about awareness and to have these powerful and necessary discussions. So thank you on touching on that, which is something that, technology is something we use every day. We're using it right now to have this webinar, but we never really think of how we can use it as a tool for advocacy and for advancing the rights of vulnerable populations. So thank you so much for that. And again, I echo the sentiment, congratulations. And, the numbers of Pride indicate the power of what happens when we all come together. And if we can come together for Pride in our cheeky pants and our crop tops and celebrate our existence and our freedoms, limited as they may be, imagine if we came together in those very same numbers to advocate and to push law enforcement and to push for the enforcement of the laws that already exist. So thank you very much for that. That was Kay Ali. Remember, if you want to leave a comment or a question for any of our speakers, you are welcome to do so. We'll be taking those questions near the end of our session today. Remember, this is a safe space. Criticism is allowed, but we encourage and we implore kindness in your choice of words. Now, moving right along, Our next speaker is Dipuo Virginia Magwaza, also known as Njinji, who is a South African social justice, Black feminist, and human rights activist who has been involved in different social justice struggles locally and internationally. Their involvement in socioeconomic rights issues, environmental issues, workers' rights, women's and LGBTIQ plus rights has been highly significant. They are the 2021 Queer Parenting Feather Award winner, which is the category that was included in the Feather Awards based on the work done by Virginia in 2023, known in their organization, known as Parents, Families, and Friends of South African Queers, also known as PFSAC. Which mobilizes queer people's parents, families, and allies into becoming public advocates for dignity, equality, and social inclusion of LGBTIQ plus people within the society. Njinji is a well-known activist and is respected by many, certainly by me, at home and overseas in the countries they have visited and worked in across the world. Welcome to Virginia. I've said this so many times and I cannot say it enough, that one of the reasons I'm such a confident human being is because my mother has always affirmed me. My mother has said to members of our family that if you think there's something wrong with her, then you may cut us out, us as in our unit of the family. My mother has always stood for me, and my mother has always made sure that I am taken seriously. And it is because of her love and affirmation that I was never ridiculed in my community. I mean, I'm sure I was behind my back, but it was never something that was done on a public and a large scale because I had my mom advocating for me. And we cannot emphasize the importance and the role that parents play in affirming queer children. You are not a joke if your family takes you seriously. And even if other people laugh at you, if your family isn't laughing at you, that is all you need to go out and conquer. Now I'm sounding like a priest. Virginia, please take over, my darling, and welcome to our session.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. I was saying you always make my work very easy when you make that example about your mom, because we all need our mothers and our parents, our siblings to be supportive of who we are. Because yes, if there's no support, we tend to be subjected to violence. I'm going to ask Sean to put up my slides. I try to be organized. And make some notes for me on the slide so that I can control myself, because these are the issues that are very close to my heart, and I can go on and on and on. That's my introduction. I'm Virginia Njinji Magwaza, founder and director of Parents, Families, and Friends of South African Queers. We will actually be launching the Southern Africa Parents, Families, and Allies Network next week during ILGA conference. We are taking this work in the region. May I please get the next slide, please, Sean? So we speak about violence. We speak about domestic violence. I like how you defined violence, domestic violence, because sometimes we often forget that it's not only physical, and not only also forgetting, but we don't take it serious if it is not physical. We want to see the blue eyes, we want to see scars, yet we cannot see the scars that are internal. And some of the scars are caused by parents, because home can be a first encounter of violence for other LGBTI people. When parents are not accepting, and what we've learned in our work is that it's not only the fact that they are not accepting because they are homophobic, but they are not accepting, and then they are violent based on what they know and the kind of school of thought that they are coming from. So we have figured out that some parents are not homophobic. It's just that they know that there's only a man and a woman, and for them it should be like that. And if it's not like that, it's a problem. And not only the parents, but also even siblings. We see a situation where sometimes you find that the mother is accepting, and the siblings are not accepting. And the intersectionality of it is that if the family is depending on a particular child in the family, usually it is a boy child who is working, who is economically powerful or stable in the family and brings food on the table. And if they are not accepting of their little sister or elder sister who is queer, it becomes a problem. And there's also like threats of, I'm not going to continue supporting this family if we allow this to happen. And therefore issues of financial exclusion takes place, and people are isolated, as well as the fact that now there's a conflict in the family that whoever is supporting a queer member of the family is on the other side, yet those who are not supporting are on the other side. And those are the dynamics of violence that are found in the home that the LGBTIQ plus people are faced with. Next slide, please, Sean. I'm not going to follow my slides because I think I've lived this for so long, and I can just tell it as a story. And so we find a situation where a mother is accepting, a father is not accepting. And we all know in our African culture, if there is something different about a child, it's and which is in the negative according to the society, it's always blamed on the mother. But if there's something good and wonderful about the child, it's like, yeah, ingane baba, father's daughter, father's son. But whenever it's negative, it's seen as the mother's daughter or mother's son. So even within the family, the siblings will be blaming the mother. If the mother is accepting that, yeah, you are allowing this, if it was not for you allowing this, they would have stopped being this thing. These are the words and the language that is used. And to some extent, also, the kind of friends that you have are being blamed, that it is because of these friends that are making you to become this thing. And that leads to isolation, and even the whole environment changes, and it becomes unpleasant for everyone because there's this disagreements and unhappiness. Next slide, please. So when there is no acceptance in the family, and the family feels like you are a shame, you are a shame, you are bringing shame in the family, you are against the norms, they always try different things. And one of the things that they try is conversion therapy. Conversion therapy comes in different ways, and it is being used to cure you, to try and cure you according to them, which is very violent. And most of the conversion therapy, actually conversion therapy on its own, it is violent. For instance, you will be taken to a certain church or religious institution where you go through exorcism, where the religious people pray for you, praying the gay away. I'm not sure if there's any success story around that. There are those people who will be saying, yeah, I am healed, but we don't know how long does that go. And even traditional leaders, you're taken to a sangoma or a kobela, and they claim to cure you. And instead, what we see the violence perpetuated by these leaders, by these religious leaders and traditional leaders, where we've had so many reports of pastors who are given permission to cure mostly lesbian young people, and they cure them by violating them, and no one talks about that. And because a pastor is a pastor, and the pastor feel that they are in control because they've been given permission by the parent or by the family of a queer person. Even with the Kobelas or the lead traditional leaders, they often misuse their power. But what is even said is the professionals. You find social workers, you find therapists, you find counselors who would always urge queer people to stop being queer so that things are going to go better for them. And precisely because some of the professionals don't understand queer issues, and they always also bring in their religious conviction into the work that they do. Next slide, please. And then it escalates from the family to from the home to the community, as in school, where we see bullying, we see ridiculing. And bullying and ridiculing does not only end with your fellow learners, even teachers. We see teachers contributing to this violence that LGBTIQ plus are faced with in schools. And it becomes sad because also then that whole situation have led to some learners dropping out from school, and most unfortunate, some learners taking their own lives. And another level is when you go into institutions or departments or where you get a service. I think the CEO spoke about the secondary victimization. I've given it a name, especially when you go to the police station, where you are, as a queer person, you come and you get into the front and you say, my name is Virginia, and I'm coming to report a case. And then the person would be like, so what happened? You think now they're helping you, and you relate your story, and then just after you're finished, then they call another one. Hey, Kumalo, Ozozwa, come here, Kumalo. And now you need to start again. And you can see from their faces that they're actually wanting to say something, and they're surprised that how can, like, for instance, if you're in a situation where you have experienced IPV, and then you explain your relationship, who are you experiencing the IPV with, and so there'll always be those situations where they say things that will make you relive the victimization that you've experienced. And we see also with the nurses and doctors, where they constantly misgender you, regardless of the fact that you tell them that my pronouns are this and this is how I identify, but they they constantly violate you by continuing to identify you in a manner that does not affirm your gender and in a manner that does not make you comfortable. And the worst violence that we see, which is unfortunate, and the CEO spoke about the wonderful laws of South Africa, where we see a huge gap between the laws and the practical experiences of LGBTIQ plus people in South Africa, where we are actually the highest reported country on hate crimes. And these hate crimes are so brutal. They, unfortunately, is that even now in 2024, we still have cases of hate crimes. We still have cases where people are assaulted, people are murdered, and people are sexually violated. So this violence is not even spoken about in the GBVF strategy, the manner in which it's supposed to be spoken about, and not even addressed in the manner that is addressed. It should be addressed. When there are hate crimes, it is us that would be up in arms, and the institutions that are supposed to be assisting, they are just relaxed. Good example, we've been having this violence around the Grinder app, the Grinder dating app. Everything is just it's normal for people just don't, people who are supposed to be taking these things serious. We have found out that there are still people missing and we don't know where they are. And there have been cases of people that are found in a particular spot. There is no effort to try and find out what happened to other people. There's no effort to try and raise awareness around the dating app. It also falls on our shoulders as queer people to try and deal with and address our problems, which is very unfortunate. Next slide, please. So I just shared some of the links around hate crimes reported this year. This is for 2024, which is very disturbing. Like we've seen a lesbian couple being violated and murdered. We've seen gay and trans people being murdered. And in this day and age where South Africa is well known for constitutional transformative approach, where South Africa is regarded to have a great approach around dealing with hate crime. We have the National Task Team, we have the Rapid Response Team, we have the Hate Crime and Hate Speech Bill. But what does it mean for us? That's the big question, because we can't be, even now in 2024, we are experiencing these high reported crimes. Next slide, please. Another violence that is never spoken about is the violence against intersex babies, which is very serious. Intersex babies are born every day in all the hospitals in South Africa, and they are subjected to continuous violence because the medical fraternity feels it is important to align them to the binary, even though their body does not align itself to the binary. It is then we see intersex genital mutilation, where people, babies are born and then the doctors take them to fix them and then give them a private part that fits into the binary. But most importantly, and these are not reported anywhere, where in the rural areas, when a baby is born intersex, the midwife will just twist their neck and the baby is no more. And this leads to isolation of intersex people. In schools, they are isolated, they are bullied, and everywhere they don't feel like they are part of the society. And these are the issues that are not out there, and not many people know about these issues and how serious they are. So what do we do when all this is happening and when you have all this violence that is really hidden behind the shadows? Next slide, please. I think taking from Kay's presentation, it is important that we implement programs and processes for taking along parents, families, family members, and allies. And this is the work that we do at PIFSEC, but it's just a drop in the ocean. South Africa is a huge country. We try to be in all the provinces. However, we can be in Mpumalanga, in Komazi, but not in Nelspruit. But how do we bring in those programs that are going to be general and where everyone in South Africa participates and benefit from? And we've said this many a times: comprehensive training for educators, service providers, and health professionals. And the sad thing is that I've worked in the government. I've had an opportunity of working in many sectors. I think all the sectors that we have in this country. That in the government sector, the unfortunate part is that even those that are working in the government and are given responsibility to work on LGBTI issues, most of them are just doing it to tick the box. There is no passion about it. There is no willingness to see change. There's no willingness to change lives. And it is very unfortunate. And the bureaucracy in the government system is also killing whatever efforts that can be there. So we can talk about training, we can talk about how we want to change the situation, but if there is no full support of the government, in the true sense of support, and these programs are implemented and funded, because, I mean, how can we have these programs without money? It's impossible. And it's also important that we create safer environment for everyone, schools, communities, homes. You know, I always ask myself whether it would be possible to put to enact the law that talks about, or that talks about how we can hold responsible the parents who disown their children just because they are queer, and how also that contributes to the burden of the state, because then the social development needs to then look after this child just because, and then whose parent have negated their responsibility just because the child is queer. But and then for me, which is important, and I think it's my last point, is how do we normalize the existence of LGBTIQ plus people? It's important because all these things are happening precisely because there's been this thing that has been instilled in people's minds that there's binary. Beyond binary, it's abnormal. Beyond binary, it's not part of us. Beyond binary should be killed. Beyond binary should not be accepted. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. Oh, so what we can do is to spread love and acceptance. I've just shared some of the few videos of how parents who are part of PRIFSEC have shared love, and sometimes we take it for granted. So at Community Pride, we have a what we call the Parents Corner, where parents from PIFSEC give hugs to queer people. And at first, when we started this, we just thought it's just an activity. But we have realized how it touches lives, and how the number of stories and the sensitivity of those stories that we get when people come to the parents just to get a hug. And someone would say, since I have been this age, I haven't received a hug from my mother just because I'm queer. This means a lot to me. And I think that is, for me, a demonstration of how love can go a long way and how acceptance can actually deal with issues of gender-based violence and femicide intimate partner violence, because one of the reasons why people become the perpetrators of intimate partner violence is because they've been hurt. And then, as we all know, hurt people hurt people. So we need to instill this love. We need to practice acceptance and ensure that we instill a very strong foundation that will ensure that all these violences that we are speaking about are eliminated. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That was Dipuo Virginia Wenjinji. Magwaza. Thank you for that. I hope all the parents of children of different ages who are part of our engagement, I hope you're all listening, and I hope that that message resonates with you and it'll be something you put into practice. Thank you also for making prescriptions in terms of solutions and suggestions, very practical suggestions as well. Many of which are actionable and don't need money. But let's not forget that we do need money. And thank you for mentioning that as well. And also thank you for touching on the evils of conversion therapy, which happens in so many different ways. You spoke about sangomas and gobelas. I know also in some communities where initiation school, going to initiation school where a boy becomes a man, that has also been used as conversion therapy to take the gay out of you somewhere in the mountains. And we know that these practices are not only evil and hurtful, but they don't work. That's the worst part. They don't work. People just end up being depressed and suppressing their queerness and stop embracing it. But we know that we are born this way, and that is what it is. Thank you so much, Virginia. We still now we are going into our panel discussion. Our panel discussion is going to take a bit of a different format. We have 3 speakers with us, and they are going to do their presentation. Some will be just speaking, some will be will have visuals, and I just want to implore our panelists to try to limit their speeches or their presentation rather to 5 minutes maximum. We are now at the top of the hour. You can hear our work in radio. We are at the top of the hour with 30 minutes remaining, and we just want to give everybody a chance to share your valuable knowledge. So please do keep that in mind as you do your presentation. And keeping time in mind, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Miss Nicole Gurles-Blair. I hope I'm saying it properly. Since September this year, Ms. Gurles-Blair has been serving as head of section for governance and human development at the European Union delegation to South Africa. She was born in the UK, holds British and Spanish nationality, and holds a master's degree in international security from Sciences Po in Paris. Prior to her posting in South Africa, she served as policy assistant to the director of Sub-Saharan Africa in DG INTPA at the European Commission in Brussels. She started her career in the European Commission as a trainee in the cabinet of President Juncker before going on to work on EU-AU relations in DG INTPA. Nicole, welcome to our webinar today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I do hope you can hear me. Just shout if you can't. I have another meeting, I'm afraid, shortly after, so I'm going to try and speed through my presentation in order to hopefully stay for as many of the questions as possible. But if not, then please still don't hesitate if you have any questions specifically for me. And then the organizers have kindly said that they will pass them on and we will get back to you. So firstly, as I said, thank you so much for inviting me today, and thank you to the speakers before me. It's been absolutely fascinating to listen to you all. What I'll do is I'll focus a bit what I'm going to say on the role of international partnerships in supporting the LGBTQIA+ community, as that's really our area, let's say, of expertise. So just to begin with very broadly, so what we refer to as international partnerships, the European Union and the broader international community play crucial roles in advancing LGBTQI+ rights in South Africa by providing support in various political, social, and economic dimensions. So our contributions generally include financial aid, advocacy, capacity building, and promotion of human rights standards. So just to give you a couple examples of these instruments. So, for example, financial and technical support. So support to international development agencies, NGOs, and bilateral cooperation efforts that often provide financial resources to local LGBTQIA+ organizations. And this supports projects focused on legal aid, healthcare, education, and protection of individuals from violence and discrimination. Secondly, we also have capacity building, where we help local civil society organizations, for example, strengthen their capacities to advocate for LGBTQIA+ rights, engage in political dialogue, and participate in international forums. And thirdly, there's also human rights advocacy. So here, this is where development partners often work with our South African partners to ensure alignment with international human rights commitments, encouraging reforms in areas where LGBTQIA+ individuals face systemic inequalities. More generally, we also have what the international community does. So, for example, here we have global advocacy, for example, with multilateral organizations such as United Nations, international human rights groups such as Amnesty International, and they're really, for example, focused on holding governments to account. We also have legal reform and protection, so where you have international organizations lobbying for legal protections of individuals, including protection from hate crimes, discrimination, and exclusion. And then there's also funding and resource sharing, so where we also have international donors getting together to fund LGBTQIA+ rights programs in South Africa, for example, in health. This has also included HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment programs that obviously disproportionately affect LGBTQIA+ populations. We also then, of course, finally have, and this is linked a bit to advocacy that I said before, awareness and education campaigns. So global awareness campaigns to help reduce stigma and discrimination against individuals. But maybe to give a bit now breakdown on the European Union, so our role in advancing LGBTQIA+ rights, which is embedded in our policies, strategies, and commitments to our partnerships. So within that, we have human rights diplomacy. So we have a strong stance on promoting LGBTQIA+ rights globally, including in South Africa, through diplomatic channels and its political dialogues. The EU is consistently pressing for protection for human rights for all, including for individuals. So we work with international platforms such as the UN. We also, for example, take part in the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. The EU and other member states and ambassadors often making public statements, participating in events to raise awareness. And also these diplomatic actions really help reinforce our commitment to equality and to signal to South Africa and the region that for us, these rights are a priority on the global stage. We also have our funding programs, which I'll also mention a few more specifically after, but the EU provides direct funding for initiatives that promote gender equality and combat discrimination. In South Africa, these programs often target vulnerable LGBTQIA+ groups, human rights defenders, and promotes access to healthcare, justice, and employment. And then also we have our trade and partnership agreements, where we incorporate human rights clauses into our trade and cooperation agreements. So despite these efforts previously mentioned, of course, the LGBTQIA+ individuals in South Africa and globally still face significant challenges, as we've heard a lot about today. These include social stigma, violence, and limited access to healthcare and justice. While the country's legal framework is progressive, implementation often lags due to societal attitudes and institutional capacity issues. So by working in partnership with South African government bodies, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders in the international community, including the EU and development cooperation actors, plays an essential role in reinforcing the country's commitment to equality and human rights for all. So I'm just going to maybe give you a couple of specific things that we've done as the EU, especially in the context of South Africa. So for example, we have our European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights. And through this, we provide funding and technical support to CSOs organizations in South Africa and other Southern African countries. And this initiative focuses on promoting equality, combating discrimination, and protecting human rights defenders working on LGBTQIA+ issues. We also have the European Commission's LGBTQIA+ equality strategy. Regionally, this strategy emphasizes non-discrimination and equal rights for LGBTQIA+ individuals, supports various advocacy projects through collaboration with local NGOs and governments across Africa. So some further examples of concrete support I'll mention. So we have a highly impactful regional program of 2 million euros, which is called Out and Proud, which aims to improve the legislative frameworks and non-discriminatory environment in favor of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex people in Southern Africa. The EU also recently contracted a grant called the Nali Temba, Preventing Violence, Expanding Access to Rights, and Bringing Hope to Trans and Gender Diverse Communities in South Africa. This grant responds to the gap existing in between the progressive human rights framework in South Africa, including on gender equality, women, and LGBTQIA+ rights, and the actual enjoyment of such rights due to combined factors of religion, culture, sexism, size normativity, heteronormativity, racism, and classism. We currently also support programs on the protection and empowerment of human rights defenders across the country and the region, on the prevention of gender-based violence and femicide, and on addressing intersections between vulnerable groups and climate change. In 2022, together with our member states, we also collectively supported the second presidential GBVF summit with a funding of around R1 million, and we provided technical assistance through €10 million budget support program implemented by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Social Development and Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. This year, to emphasize our solidarity with the LGBTQIA+ community and their rights, the EU delegation to South Africa has partnered with the Embassy of the Netherlands to create a permanent rainbow driveway at our missions. This visual statement, launched on the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, is part of broader efforts to foster inclusive space and aligns with the EU's commitments to human rights in South Africa. We've also co-hosted numerous screenings around very nuanced issues within the context of LGBTQIA+ communities. And we have also supported the Soweto Pride event for the last 4 years. So these examples are really just to refer to give an example of how the international community, international development, and the multilateral community can support the LGBTQIA community, and also to really play a critical role in advancing their rights in South Africa and also regionally. I'm very happy to refer you as well if you do have specific questions. We also have a focal point in the EU delegation for gender and LGBTQIA+. So if I'm happy to take questions and also afterwards refer you to our focal point, Rosa, who is online for any further follow-up questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation, Nicole. There's a lot of money that the international community is bringing into the country, specifically with regards to vulnerable communities. And I'm sure the question on everyone's mind, especially the NGOs and the NPOs that have joined us, is how can we apply and access these funds? So we will be getting that information from you, and we will be publicizing it on our GBVF Response Fund socials, and also as part of this conversation, if you can leave that information in the comments as well, and any other questions that we will get, we will most definitely forward to you, as this is a live conversation, but it's also a living document, and we can still add on to it afterwards. So thank you very much for that, and do continue with the support. And I'm not just referring to the funding, but all the various other programs that you mentioned, the international community to be involved in. Thank you also for respecting our time constraints, as I've requested that each speaker please be limited to 5 minutes. I don't want to have to be rude and to interrupt you or to cut you, because everything that you have to say is important to us and the audience. Our next speaker is Togo Mudise, who is currently serving as the site manager for the Transgender Clinic in Nelson Mandela Bay. Togo is a social worker by training and one of our most passionate and hardworking site managers. She's been doing an amazing job managing the teams and driving performances at site. Togo, welcome to our webinar, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for the wonderful work that you do, and yeah, please share with us some of the things that you do. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm very blessed to be part of the session today. I will be sharing a couple of slides. Hopefully I'll be able to keep in the time, considering that our time is very minimal at this point. Sean, can you please share our slides? Thank you. Second slide, please. So today I'll just be very brief, and I'll be sharing on VISRHI Key Populations Background Program, and I will share about our services, our cases that we've intervened in and the outcomes, and I will just flag some of the partners that we are collaborating with in the community. Next slide, please. So VISRHI is a research institute that has been funded by USAID to provide accessible, quality HIV prevention and treatment services to key populations in South Africa. Next slide. The Key Populations Program provides HIV prevention, treatment, and care services not only on site, but we are a hybrid system that provides services both on site level and in the community. We are in a number of 9 dedicated sites in 7 health districts across South Africa, and we are funded by USAID, and the duration of the program has been since 2018, and we are due to end the program in 2025 in September. So the program aims to achieve the joint United Nations Program HIV USAID 9595 targets, and we aim to intensify HIV prevention amongst female sex workers and TG individuals, including the uptake of pre-exposure prophylaxis, strengthen HIV case finding and linkage to care to increase the initiation of antiretroviral therapy in line with the universal test and treat system, foster high quality clinical care to improve retention in care, and to maximize virological suppression. So our 9 sites are found, 1 in Limpopo, which is a sex worker site, 4 sites in Johannesburg, which is 3 sites for sex worker program and 1 for TG, 2 TG sites in the Eastern Cape, and 2 sites in the Western Cape, which is 1 is for sex worker services, and the other one is for TG. Thank you. Next slide. So our program provides a comprehensive gender-affirming HIV service package tailor-made for key populations. We deliver the service as a sensitized multidisciplinary team that focuses on gender-affirming healthcare. We have a sessional doctor on site, and then we have peer educators that focus on primary healthcare and ensuring that clients are treated on the same day. We have a team of nurses, social workers that now focuses on mental health counseling, gender-affirming healthcare, information sharing, gender-affirming marker application, and gender-based violence interventions. So as I mentioned previously, that these services are not only provided on a site level, they are also provided in the community. This makes sure that all our clients are serviced in an area that they are comfortable in and they feel safe. It also bridges the gap between accessibility and being able to access the services that our key populations require. Next slide, please. So this slide just gives a brief breakdown on the services that we've provided to key populations with our supporting partners. So as mentioned before, yes, we do still experience cases that come in that have been reported that are related to emotional, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, police harassment, financial abuse. So these are only the cases that we come to know of because clients feel comfortable to come to the sites or even in our outreach services to report such cases. However, we are aware that some of the cases remain unreported. So the challenges that we experience with the cases that have been reported is a stigma, where clients feel that they cannot refer or even talk about what has been happening to them or what has happened to them because it happens to people like us. So it happens so frequently that clients feel that it's supposed to happen to them because it's either they are sex workers or because they are transgender individuals. So another challenge that we're experiencing is the lack of sensitized referral organization. So we don't even have at this current point referral places of safety, for example, for sex workers who've experienced brutality, or for transgender women who have, example, experienced gender-based violence, let's say it's physical abuse. So as a result, we always rely on relationships with friends and gender-sensitized families who are willing to house our clients in those trying times. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this slide, my closing slide, is just to share some of the NGOs and partners that we're partnering with in the community. So this reflects all the 9 sites. These are referral systems that we've managed to build. But in this day and age, you know, we really look forward to developing systems in the community themselves. Gigi did express that, you know, community work and community relationship, family relationships are very strong in tying up the issue and just closing the gaps between gender-based violence and having systems where our clients feel supported and accepted for who they are. So in closure, we are recognizing the needs of our key population, and we have brought up systems that are trying to tie up and close the gaps between unsensitized organizations and those that are available in the community, where we can build strong referral systems, ensuring that our clients receive a holistic package of services. Thank you. Back to you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Togo. Thank you for that enlightening presentation. It's very sad to learn that still in this day and age, we don't have referral places of safety, which is something I took from your presentation. And I'm hoping that you know, as we are composing a list of resolutions, this becomes one of our targets to say that this is something that we need to do going forward, especially going into the 2025 financial year. We need referral places of safety, especially for transgender people in general, for sex workers and for transgender sex workers. So thank you for that, and for highlighting that, for reminding us of the plight of sex workers. I think you're the first person to speak about that. Something very important and often overlooked because of the stigma and the misconceptions and the judgment that surrounds the profession. So you're doing some great work there, and I see you working with Sisonke and with Sweat as well. who are also doing some great work in that space. So thank you very, very much. The laws around sex work are also very complicated, and this leads me to my next speaker, who is from the Legal Resource Center. Cheryl Das is a practicing legal practitioner admitted in the High Court of South Africa. She has been practicing law for the past 24 years. That's older than some of your partners. And has been a refugee law practitioner and public interest litigator for the last 18 years in the public interest NGO sector. Cheryl is currently working as the regional director of Legal Resource Center in Cape Town, and I'm familiar with the work. They're doing some great work, especially because a lot of people don't know their rights to begin with. So rights are often infringed upon. Cheryl, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Didi, for having me. And yeah, I'm mindful of time, so I'm just going to go straight in. I've sort of like in between sort of cut off my presentation because a lot of the things that I wanted to say, around the contextual background, I think the speakers that have gone before me have already spoke to. So I'm going to focus specifically on issues that haven't been raised earlier on in the discussion. Violence and hate directed towards LGBTQIA plus persons is a pervasive issue, and not just in South Africa, but regionally and internationally. In 2006, in response to well-documented patterns of abuse, a group of international human rights experts met to develop a comprehensive set of international principles relating to sexual orientation and gender identity. And this has become an authoritative set of principles that affirm binding international legal standards with which all states must comply. It has become known as the Uganda Principles. The preamble to the principles acknowledge that violence, harassment, discrimination, exclusion, stigmatization, and prejudice are directed against persons in all regions of the world because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. It is thus clear that discrimination is widespread and systemic in nature, and such harassment, discrimination, exclusion, stigmatization, and prejudice undermines the integrity and dignity of LGBTIQIA plus persons. It diminishes their self-worth, which may also lead to them hiding who they are out of fear. In the South African context, we must view gender-based violence directed towards LGBTIQIA plus persons through an intersectional lens, taking into account our colonial and apartheid history and how Western narratives and norms have been deeply embedded within our value system. LGBTQI persons may experience different types of violence, and it may affect different groups within the community themselves differently. For instance, lesbian persons may experience persecution within her community on the basis of her gender and her sexual orientation. A person's gender identity refers to their very closely, deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender. And this may not necessarily correspond with the sex assigned to them at birth, and this includes also their personal sense of their own body. A transgender person is a person who rejects the gender that was assigned to them at birth. They feel that there is a complete inconsistency between their individual gender identity and their biological or physical sex. Currently, there is no enabling, effective legal framework, either through law or policy, that creates an environment that allows transgender persons to express their gender identity in a safe and inclusive manner. Transgender persons are thus exceptionally vulnerable to victimization, violence, and discrimination in many day-to-day interactions that other at-risk groups may not necessarily experience. One of the major challenges experienced by this group of people is a lack of legal recognition of their gender identity. And the LRC, together with partners, the Triangle Project and GDX, have been working extensively on advocating for legal recognition of gender identity of transgender persons. A transgender person's legal identity documents, birth certificates, passports, driver's license, etc., always misrepresents their gender identity. And this, in and of itself, exposes them to added risks. should their outward and true expression, either through changing their bodily appearance or through gender-affirming healthcare, does not correspond with their official documentation. By expressing greater bodily and gender diversity rather than confirming cis-normative constructs of men and women, transgender persons are exposed to stigma, harassment, sexual and physical violence at the hands of family members, the communities, and state actors. The other groups of LGBTI communities that I want to talk about are refugees, LGBTQI refugees. This is another group that may be exposed to different forms of gender-based violence. South Africa, with its progressive constitution and progressive legislative reforms, have become a safe haven for African refugees fleeing persecution in the region. Persons fleeing persecution on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity has been recognized under international refugee law protection as grounds to claim asylum in a member state country of which South Africa is. LGBTIQI refugees often experience secondary persecution in South Africa through various interactions with specifically state actors as well as the general population. We often see a high rate of rejection of asylum claims for LGBTQIA refugees due to the incompetence of DHO officials, but also Home Affairs officials are just ordinary people like ourselves, and their own perceived biases and prejudice are reflective of the general pervasive prejudice that permeates our society. A transgender refugee, for example, might experience the same risk and prejudice as any other transgender person in South Africa, but is also exposed to further risk of violence for merely being a non-national. We've seen the height of xenophobia within this country and xenophobic narratives. And what this means for an LGBTQI refugee is on the one hand, being rejected for asylum puts them at risk of being deported and sent back to a country where their life or their liberty is in jeopardy. They face long-term life imprisonment and in some countries death. So there's serious concerns with this community that has to be recognized. So what are the current legal frameworks that address these concerns? Obviously, the Constitution is the supreme law of the Republic, and any law or conduct that is inconsistent with the Constitution is invalid. The Bill of Rights is our cornerstone of our democracy, and it speaks about respecting, promoting, protecting, and fulfilling the rights in the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights recognizes that the state is obligated to respect, promote, and protect constitutional rights, including the right to equality, dignity, privacy, and other socioeconomic rights, as well as healthcare, education, security of the person, and bodily integrity. And as other speakers have spoken, a lot of LGBTI community members have not seen the benefit of this progressive right. These provisions provide the foundations for legislative and policy reform to create an enabling environment that can alleviate some of the challenges experienced by LGBTQIA persons. The Alteration of Sex Description and Sex Status Act, for example, was promulgated after pressure from civil society to enable transgender persons to alter their sex description on their official identity documents. While this move was positive, the act in itself, in the current form that it is, provides further barriers to transgender persons changing their sex descriptors, making the act largely ineffectual. The act also does not apply to transgender asylum seekers and refugees who wish to change their names and sex description on their asylum and refugee visas. And the last thing that I want to speak about is the Prevention of and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill, which was signed into law on the 6th of May 2024. It was introduced in 2018 and then it stalled and was revived in 2021. The bill aims to protect people from hate crimes and hate speech based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and other forms of discrimination. It defines a hate crime as an offense motivated by prejudice or intolerance against the victim's characteristics. Now, this bill is yet to come into effect, and I think there's been frustrations over a number of years as to why that is. So currently we are waiting on the president to proclaim the bill, and we're waiting for the bill to become operational once regulations have been promulgated. But this delay in and of itself is an injustice for all survivors of gender-based violence, including the LGBTIQ plus persons. So yeah, I could speak for hours, but I'm going to leave it there because I'm mindful that there is a session for questions and answers. So thank you very much, Didi, and I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Cheryl. Your understanding of transgender challenges and the layers and the problems that we encounter, and especially with regards to just legal recognition, changing of gender markers, and also constantly having to produce documents, whether it's your driver's license, your bank card, your ID document, in various scenarios. I mean, even now entering some residential complexes require us to present a driver's license, a valid driver's license, which for many of us, we do have the relevant documentation, but it has captured the wrong gender, you know, and the secondary victimization that comes with that, the humiliation, and also just the potential for putting ourselves in danger, because the way we are documented is obviously not the way we present. Thank you so much for emphasizing on that and for the recognition on that. It's very assuring to hear legal practitioners being aware of our plight, and hopefully this is going to result in solutions, in expediting us getting those legal documents and not having to wait 6 to 9 months, just because in the meantime your life goes on and you need to carry on with administrative duties. So thank you so much for that, and also for reminding us about the plight of refugees, those who are fleeing persecution from their countries. And also that you mentioned that South Africa is a highly xenophobic country, even towards cishet people. So imagine the vulnerabilities and the vulnerable situation that refugee LGBTIQ plus people find themselves in, because then they are double negative, and the challenges that come with that, and asylum seeking, and all those other logistics. So thank you so much for reminding us about that, and keep up the good work that you and your team are doing. People also remember that these services exist for us. Places like the Legal Resource Center exists for us, and it is up to us to report crimes perpetuated against us, and so that they can follow up on them. I know sometimes it's very discouraging because we've seen how the law treats us, and the backlog of cases, and how perpetrators are arrested the one day and then they're back on the streets the following day, and now we're in even more danger. You know, we've seen how that happens, but the law is still a very valuable tool, and it can still be used to advocate for us. We have one last speaker here with us, and thank you for bearing with us. We are seeing the comments on YouTube. Thank you for those of us who've joined, and thank you for bearing with us. We do realize that we are running a bit over time, so I'm going to ask our fabulous final speaker to keep it as short as possible. But thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. Please keep that engagement coming. We are going to address all your questions and concerns and comments at a later stage. But today, you know, we're going to have to wrap it up in the interest of time. My next speaker is Thando Mpande, pronouns she, they. She is from SHE, S-H-E, in the East London, working as a program coordinator and M&E officer for the Human Rights Program. Thando, welcome to our webinar. Remembering the time constraint, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thando Mpande. My pronouns are she and her. I work for SHE organization that is based in East London. Yeah, I think the speakers has captured me. I'd like for you, Sean, to flight the presentation, please. Okay, next slide, please. So firstly, just to give a brief update about the organization. The organization is a trans-led organization that is working for transgender people, but we do work for LGBTI as a whole. But our main mission is to work and capacitate transgender women. It is a trans-led organization that was founded, and director of the organization is Leanne van der Merwe. It is now 14 years in operation. The head office is in East London. We have 2 sites. The one that is in Tambo, in Tata. The other one for the TG is in the Garden Route in the Western Cape. So yeah, speaking about the intersectionalities between GBVF and trans women, I think everyone, just in the sake of time, everyone has captured me on this, but what are the challenges that we're facing as trans people, right? So this is just to give an overview. What are the challenges that we're facing? Widespread discrimination and stigma, high rates of violence, limited access to healthcare, legal and administrative challenges, economic marginalization, mental health concerns, social exclusion and isolation. So next slide, please. Forms of violence of experience by transgender women. Sorry, push. Physical and, sorry guys about that, physical and sexual violence. These are the things that we really experiencing as trans women. Hate crimes, intimate partner violence, and sexual assault. Emotional and psychological abuse. The misgendering, harassment, discrimination, and also the societal and institutional violence, employment discrimination, barriers in healthcare, legal and administrative challenges. We all know that we are struggling to find employment because we are not educated, because the system does not allow us to carry on because of the abuse that we are getting from the peers, from the teachers, from anyone from the community. So we end up doing work that is informal or work that is not right. Next slide, please. The impact of violence on trans women, mental health. Obviously, we struggle with mental health, anxiety, depression, PTSD, physical health, injury, lack of access to necessary medical care. So in terms of gender affirming healthcare services, which is especially in the Eastern Cape, because it's only available in East London and also in the NMB. So people that are in the rural areas are struggling to find gender affirming healthcare in those rural areas. They need to travel. So imagine for someone that is not working, who's unemployed, how are they going to transport themselves from Nkanduli to come to East London or to go to PE? So these are the impact of all of these things that we are facing with. The social impact, homelessness, unemployment, social isolation. The economic impact, limited employment opportunities, financial instability. Because Home Affairs is not processing my gender identity, how are they going to employ me with my ID saying something else, but with my expression, with my identity is saying something else? So these are the issues that we are facing and also have impact on us. Next slide, please. The intervention strategies for support, community education and sensitization, mental health and counseling support, safe spaces, legal advocacy, sensitization workshops to healthcare system, SABs and other critical stakeholders. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Sharon. Hi, Sean. Okay, so what are the best practices from SHU? What are we doing? So what are we doing in order for us to combat this gender-based violence and femicide within the trans community? What we do is that we do safe spaces workshops. Those are weekly gatherings that provide transgender women and gender diverse people with a secure environment for empowerment and support. We have a program that is called Choices as well, whereby it's a 5-day workshop. We empower trans women on bodily autonomy, personal safety, mental health and well-being. We also capacitate them in economic empowerment programs, whereby we do CV, how to look for jobs, and we do also makeup skills, and we do computer trainings as well under the skills building program, which is called Tuli's Hub program, where we do a lot of job hunting, we do sewing, and also other practical skills, whereby if you have a skill in terms of creating a bid, so we do those things. Pity that we don't have pictures for this. I'll show you the work that we're doing. We also do human rights education. We do community dialogues, educating the community, the families, and also we do sensitization workshops with SAPS, with also Department of Health, with social development, and other critical stakeholders that we work with. Next slide, please. Next slide, Sean. Oh, it's done. Oh, okay. I think, yeah, that's it. I think what we are doing is that what's lacking between the GBV and advocacy is that the programs mostly are created, especially by this mainstream organization, are created for cisgender women. They're not inclusive of the transgender people. So I think this funding or donors need to employ transgender people or LGBTI people so that they can assist in terms of creating these programs whereby they can be in the community level, and also at the key population they're trying to target or to achieve. So I think, yeah, that's it on my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Tando. Please carry on with the beautiful work that you are doing. We have come to the end of what has been a very beautiful and engaging webinar. I'm just going to read some of your comments from our YouTube page where we've been streaming on the Mail and Guardian YouTube page. Faith Edmonds says, very insightful and inspiring webinar. How do we foster collaboration and partnerships in the Northwest Province? Our passion lies in economic inclusion as one of the solutions to overcome GBVF. Sybil Otterstrom is also saying charity begins at home. Kids also need to be educated from an early age on this subject. And if your own family disowns you, where do you go? And the outside world will find it difficult to accept you too. Very, very true. Something that Virginia Magwaza spoke on. And also, I see here that Nokutulam Jwara is saying, we are also experiencing growing homophobic attitudes from Uber drivers who are foreign nationals. Apart from giving them a low rating, how can we hold drivers accountable? These are some of the questions that are coming from Twitter. And these questions are going to be used to inform the next webinar and the next session, where we're also going to include the people who these questions are addressed to in order to make sure that we resolve these problems. But from me, Meditejo and the gender-based violence and femicide response fund, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sparing your time and sharing this morning with us. And on that note, happy Pride Month Africa, and happy Halloween. Let us end this year on a positive note. And, just to take from some of the resolutions, let us educate yourself and others, support LGBTQI plus organizations, and utilize technology for good. I love that all our speakers had interventions and solutions and suggestions and proposals at the end of their presentations to really show that the efficacy of this webinar, and to show that we are intentional about fixing these problems and not just having a talk shop. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience, and let's catch each other on the next one.